So even though I write in Chapter 2 that karma is in fact real, the most common feedback I get about Chapter 2 is, I don't agree, Jonathan. I think karma is real. The point of Chapter 2 is not to say that fate or God or karma are not real things. The point of this chapter is to point out that fate may or may not be real, but it doesn't benefit you to think about. Because the result must be the same, which is this. You need to put as much effort as possible into the things that are important to you. The problem is, what happens is, the more people lean into fate and destiny, the less effort they usually put into things. For example, I often hear people say things like, well, I tried to get that job I wanted, but I didn't get it. It didn't work out. So it wasn't meant to be. But the reality is you may needed to have just tried 3 or 4 times. Additionally, the reasons that people give for saying that they don't believe in coincidence are not usually well thought out. This is how it usually goes. You ask someone, why do you believe in fate? And they will inevitably tell you that it's because they've seen or experienced things that no one can explain. And I might say, well, try to explain. And most people will say, well, I can't think of any right now. But if you really press somebody on it and say, well, try to think of some examples. Take your time. Take an hour. Take a week. Really, there's no rush. Take as much time as you need and get back to me with some examples. A small amount of people will come back to you with an example or examples. And those examples have a common denominator. They all share something. And that is that they involve spectacular coincidence. In other words, they experience something with a low statistical probability of it occurring. For example, someone might point to a time when they were at a party and they ran into somebody with the same birthday, or they were on vacation somewhere and ran into someone they know. Take any example. In the book, I use the plane crash example. There's a plane that crashes, and you were supposed to have been on it, but you got pulled over on the way to the airport and got a ticket and missed your flight. And you say, well, this proves that fate and God and destiny are all real things. But I say that getting pulled over doesn't mean anything, because out of the 300 people on the manifest that day, well, 3 of them got pulled over, and 2 of them got on the plane and died, and 1 of them didn't. And you might say, well, but this is still evidence that fate exists, because it was their fate to have gotten pulled over, and yet still gotten on the plane, and died. And there are 297 other people on the plane who died. And you might say, well, they just got a really serious dose of fate. But the other 297 people had really nothing interesting happen to them on their way to the airport, and yet they experienced fate all the same. The problem is, when nothing interesting happens, we say that's also fate. But if that's the case, then amazing coincidence isn't evidence of fate if everything, interesting or not, is our fate. So whether the end result was positive or negative, when someone avoids a plane crash because they got pulled over and were given a ticket on their way to the airport, we say it proves that fate is real. When someone gets onto a plane and it crashes, we say it's fate. With that logic, our first example, where someone got a ticket on their way to the airport, can't be indicative of fate because fate doesn't follow a particular outcome, neither positive nor negative. So the proponents of fate refute the evidence we use to support it. This is main character syndrome. Nearly every single flight has people who don't make their flight. Airlines intentionally overbook every single flight they can, knowing that a percentage of people will not show up. You can certainly count yourself extremely lucky, although not even really that lucky if you think about it statistically. In fact, it's a statistical probability that a number of people won't show up or won't make it to that flight. So this is not a matter of evidence that supports fate or God. It's evidence of statistical ignorance. Now, there might be fate, God, predestination, karma, and all things like that. But we sound really stupid when we give uneducated examples. Here's another example. Do you know how many people need to be at a party in order for it to be statistically more likely than not that someone in that room shares a birthday? Just 23. If you ask 100 people to call a coin toss, heads or tails, in the air 10 times, someone in that room will likely call it correctly all 10 times in a row. And now this is so true that they've even conducted this same experiment with monkeys and found that they had similar results. And as far as running into someone you know on a vacation, mathematicians have worked out that everyone on Earth is connected to everyone else by only roughly 6 or fewer degrees of separation, meaning you can reach nearly any person on Earth through a chain of about 5 intermediaries, or friends of a friend. And that's without social media. With social media, the number is closer to 3.5 to 4.7 degrees. Again, this is main character syndrome. So you get into a car accident and say, what are the odds that I would walk away from that without a scratch? Well, I don't know what the statistics are. But you ask, what are the odds? Well, the odds are the odds. The fact that there are odds, that there is a percentage, should open your eyes to how silly it is that you're amazed enough by coincidence to say, this is God giving me a sign. The evidence we use to support our belief in fate is the evidence we conveniently say is not important and doesn't mean anything. We cut the head off our own argument. The proponents of our own view are the ones that refute it.